Now we have 138 people joining. We just give them a bit of time.
Thank you. Very nice. Still on. Yeah, good morning, my esteemed counterparts, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this important webinar with the theme Role of Ombudsman in Building Trust and Resolving Conflict. My name is Bashir Abubakar. I am the Chief Commissioner of Public Complaints Commission of Federal Republic of Nigeria, the country's ombudsman institution. And I will be the facilitator for today's webinar. First and foremost, permit me to thank the organizers of this event, the African Ombudsman Research Center, led by Advocate Goleka Galeka, the public prosecutor of South Africa, for putting together what promises to be an insightful and interactive session today. The African Ombudsman Research Center's role as a research arm of African Ombudsman and Mediators Association, AOMA, has been very indispensable to deepening the awareness and knowledge of ombudsman institution in the continent. It is my belief that through events like this, we can share and gain valuable knowledge on best practices that will enable us to strengthen our various institutional capacities to deliver on our core responsibilities of conflict resolution and fostering peaceful and cooperative environment in our respective countries. When we look around our continent today, we have been plagued with many intrastate violent conflicts. Most of these conflicts have threatened the survival of affected states. They have caused tremendous pain and suffering for millions of Africans. A careful study of these conflicts, as many researchers have shown, are that they start first as disputes, which remain unresolved for a long time, for a period of for a long time, before escalating into full-blown conflicts. And at the root of some of these conflicts, as researchers have further shown, are unequal power relations, injustice, inequities from distribution of resources, ethno-religious crisis, and lack of inclusiveness in political and economic systems. Fortunately, many African countries today have embraced the concept of ombudsman. Ombudsman institution serves as a bridge between the government and the governed, helping to resolve disputes and entrench a culture of accountability and trust. One of key distinctive attributes of ombudsman is impartiality. This key attribute is crucial in conflict resolution. Our discussion today, therefore, will deepen our understanding of the vital role ombudsman institutions play in resolving of conflicts and fostering trust between governments and citizens. For our discussions today, we are privileged to have with us seasoned practitioners who will share their knowledge and perspectives on evolving role of ombudsman in conflict resolution. We have 3 speakers, and each of them is to speak between 10 to 15 minutes, after which we open the floor for questions and answer session. Our first speaker today is the Honorable Amy Loretine Kenyana. the coordinator, Central African Region of AOMA. Honorable Kanyana has served as prosecutor, a judge, Central Bank's vice governor, and first woman to hold the position of Burundian Ombudsman. Her presentation will focus on exploring the role of Ombudsman in conflict resolution, case studies, and lessons learned. Honorable Kanyana, we are glad to have you with us this morning. I will now hand over to you to make your presentation. Thank you so much to our overwhelming listeners and viewers. I wish us happy viewing.
Oui, mesdames, messieurs, et madame la présidente de la AOMA, chers collègues ombudsman et médiateurs, bonjour. C'est pour moi un honneur de présenter le thème intitulé le rôle des ombudsman dans la résolution des conflits, cas du Burundi et enseignements tirés. Mesdames, Messieurs, comme vous le savez, les conflits font partie intégrante de nos vies et certains sont déjà éclatés et d'autres sont encore latentes. Ils peuvent avoir un caractère personnel ou communautaire. Et vous savez que la manière dont les différentes situations sont gérées détermine souvent l'issue et leur impact à long terme. Il est donc primordial de chercher des méthodes de résolution des conflits qui soient à la fois efficaces et respectueuses des parties impliquées. Et parmi les différentes approches de gestion des conflits, la médiation s'impose comme un outil de plus en plus prisé. Cette méthode permet d'apaiser les tensions, de favoriser le dialogue et d'encourager une approche constructive de la résolution des différends. Contrairement à des solutions plus adversariales comme les procédures judiciaires, la médiation privilégie la recherche de compromis et la réconciliation, tout en permettant à chaque partie de conserver son autonomie. Dans cette présentation, nous allons explorer la médiation comme un outil de résolution des conflits, ses avantages, la typologie des conflits entre l'administration et les citoyens, et quelques cas de médiation réussis et les leçons tirées. Tout de suite, voyons comment la médiation est un outil de résolution des conflits et ses avantages. En fait, la médiation entre l'administration et la population joue un rôle essentiel dans la création et le maintien d'une relation de confiance et de coopération, et pour des raisons que je vais passer en revue. La médiation, d'abord, renforce la confiance. Elle permet d'établir un dialogue transparent et ouvert entre l'administration et les citoyens. Elle permet aussi l'amélioration de la qualité du service public, en ce sens que elle permet aux citoyens de faire part de leurs problèmes, de leurs besoins ou de leurs insatisfactions. La médiation permet à l'administration de mieux comprendre les attentes des usagers et de prendre des mesures pour améliorer la qualité des services publics. La médiation permet aussi la réduction des conflits et des tensions. Lorsqu'un conflit survient entre l'administration et la population, la médiation permet de résoudre ce conflit de manière apaisée et constructive, en évitant ainsi l'escalade de tensions ou des actions de violence. Elle permet aussi l'accessibilité et l'équité. La médiation garantit toutes les voix, y compris celles des groupes vulnérables.
Je m'excuse, Excellency.
Oui.
Est-ce qu'on peut stopper un peu pour voir comment les interprètes ils parlent tous en même temps? Donnez-nous au moins 1 minute pour essayer de résoudre ça. Interpreters, can you please try to be away from each other because we can hear all of you.
OK, d'accord.
Please, our interpreters, sort that out so that everybody will be able to hear. We have different languages here. Give me a thumb up on WhatsApp when it's sorted so that we can continue, interpreters.
Can I start from Ethiopia? Can you hear me?
Okay, on peut continuer maintenant. We can continue now. Thank you.
OK, merci beaucoup. Je disais que donc, la médiation permet l'accessibilité et l'équité, en ce sens que la médiation garantit toutes les voix, y compris celles des groupes vulnérables ou marginalisés, et ceci pouvant être entendu par les autorités publiques, ce qui permet la gestion plus équitable des demandes et une meilleure prise en compte de diverses réalités sociales. Et elle permet aussi la prévention des tensions sociales, l'optimisation des ressources. Oui.
Oui? Oui, je vous écoute.
You can continue, Honorable Emmy.
Ah. OK, c'est-à-dire, c'est résolu. C'est résolu maintenant. Merci beaucoup. Merci. OK. Now we can carry on. Sorry, it was just an issue with interpretation, and I'm sure it will be sorted now. Can we carry on now?
OK, merci beaucoup. Oui, merci beaucoup. Donc, je parlais des avantages de la médiation. En bref, la médiation entre l'administration et la population est un outil clé pour favoriser un climat de respect mutuel et de coopération. Elle permet de résoudre les conflits de manière rapide et efficace, tout en contribuant à la cohésion sociale et à la légitimité des institutions publiques. Tout de suite, passons à la typologie des conflits entre l'administration et les citoyens. Les conflits entre l'administration et les citoyens peuvent être variés et survenir dans de nombreux contextes. Voici les principaux types de conflits qui peuvent être observés. Il y a des conflits liés à la gestion des services publics, des conflits liés à la fiscalité, des conflits liés aux décisions administratives et aux règlements, des conflits liés à l'emploi public, des conflits liés à l'ordre administratif et bureautique, le conflit lié à l'égalité de traitement et aux discriminations, des conflits liés à la gestion de l'espace public et de l'environnement, des conflits liés à la sécurité et à la justice, des conflits liés à l'intérêt public, etc. Et ces conflits peuvent se résoudre efficacement grâce à la médiation qui offre un cadre de dialogue pour écouter les préoccupations des citoyens et clarifier les malentendus et trouver des solutions adaptées. Je vais passer alors à quelques cas de médiation réussis au Burundi. Et je commence par la résolution du problème du conflit burundais qui a duré plus d'une quarantaine d'années et qui s'est accentué lorsqu'il a éclaté une guerre civile qui a duré plus d'une décennie au Burundi. La médiation a servi d'une voie de sortie du conflit Burundi. La médiation a joué un rôle crucial dans la résolution du conflit burundais, qui a duré plus d'une année, plusieurs années, plus d'une décennie, et qui a impliqué des tensions ethniques, politiques, sociales entre les différentes communautés du pays. En effet, les gouvernements qui s'étaient succédés avaient été toujours incapables de gérer les conflits sociaux en perpétuant les mauvaises politiques et pratiques issues de la colonisation qui avaient profondément déséquilibré le pays, à savoir les politiques de favoritisme d'une communauté et la margination d'une autre en ce qui concerne le contrôle du pouvoir et les ressources, les positions administratives et politiques privilégiées, ainsi que des politiques éducatives discriminatoires. L'une des étapes majeures de la médiation dans le conflit burundais a été l'élaboration des accords d'Arusha en 2000. Ce processus a été facilité par une médiation internationale menée par le président tanzanien Julius Nyerere et plus tard son successeur Benjamin Mkapa, sous la supervision d'acteurs régionaux et internationaux comme Nelson Mandela. Ces accords ont permis de mettre en place un partage du pouvoir entre les différentes fractions politiques et ethniques, incluant des garanties pour les droits des différents membres de la communauté dont la participation dans la gestion des affaires de l'État n'était pas reconnue ou était faible, à savoir les peuples, les autochtones et les femmes. La médiation a permis de créer un dialogue entre les belligérants, même dans un climat de méfiance et de violence. Cela a donné naissance à un gouvernement de transition avec la participation de l'ensemble des groupes politiques, tout en instaurant une cessation des hostilités. La médiation a également permis de gérer les tensions ethniques qui étaient au cœur du conflit, notamment en mettant en place des mécanismes pour garantir une représentation équitable de toutes les composantes de la population dans les institutions du pays. Elle a aussi facilité des programmes de réconciliation nationale et de justice transitionnelle, favorisant une réintégration des ex-combattants dans les corps de défense et de sécurité pour former un seul corps uni et discipliné. La médiation a également permis la mise en place de mécanismes de justice transitionnelle pour traiter les crimes commis pendant la guerre. Et la commission Vérité et Réconciliation a été créée pour permettre aux victimes et aux auteurs des crimes de témoigner dans le but de favoriser la guérison collective et d'éviter des cycles de vengeance. Les accords d'Arusha ont introduit des réformes institutionnelles pour promouvoir la réconciliation et garantir les droits humains, tout en instaurant des mécanismes pour résoudre les différends de manière équitable. L'institution de l'Ombudsman du Burundi a été instaurée pour servir de mécanisme de contrôle et de médiation entre les citoyens et les autorités publiques. Son rôle principal est de recevoir les plaintes des citoyens concernant les violations des droits, l'injustice et les abus du pouvoir commis par les autorités et de chercher des solutions à ces problèmes. L'Ombudsman a été conçu comme une institution clé dans le processus de réconciliation, en offrant une plateforme neutre et indépendante où les citoyens peuvent faire entendre leur voix. Son rôle va au-delà de la simple médiation. L'Ombudsman a pour mission de traiter les abus de l'État et de garantir que les pouvoirs publics agissent de manière transparente et responsable, contribuant ainsi à instaurer la confiance entre les gouvernés et les gouvernants. Les accords d'Arusha ont prévu que l'Ombudsman soit une institution indépendante, sans interférence du gouvernement ou des partis politiques. Cela garantit son impartialité dans le traitement des plaintes et des différends. L'indépendance de l'Ombudsman est cruciale pour que cette institution puisse accomplir son travail sans subir de pression extérieure, notamment dans un pays ayant connu des décennies de conflits. L'Ombudsman est aussi devenu un agent de paix, capable de promouvoir le dialogue et de résoudre les conflits qui autrement pourraient dégénérer en violence. L'Ombudsman joue aussi un rôle essentiel dans la promotion de la bonne gouvernance en surveillant l'action des autorités publiques et en s'assurant que les décisions administratives respectent les principes de transparence, d'équité et de justice. Son rôle est particulièrement important dans un pays qui sort d'un conflit ou d'une mauvaise gestion des ressources publiques et d'abus de pouvoir peuvent facilement raviver les tensions et la méfiance entre les citoyens et l'État. Une autre fonction importante de l'Ombudsman, selon les accords d'Arusha, est le suivi des recommandations et des décisions prises suite aux plaintes. L'Ombudsman ne se contente pas de résoudre des conflits ou de rendre des décisions. Il a aussi la responsabilité de s'assurer que les autorités mettent en œuvre les décisions rendues et que des mesures concrètes soient prises pour éviter des futures injustices. Et je vais vous parler d'un autre cas de médiation réussie. Il s'agissait de 14 familles de localités de Burundi qui avaient saisi l'institution en 2017 au sujet d'une décision judiciaire dont la mise en exécution avait été problématique. Cette population qui était menacée d'expulsion des terres qu'elle exploitait pour faire vivre leur famille au profit d'une seule personne a été entendue et tout un processus de médiation entre le ministère de la Justice et cette population a été mis en route par l'Ombudsman. Il a été proposé au ministre de suspendre les mesures en objet de contestation pour permettre les parties prenantes à la médiation de se convenir sur les modalités de mise en exécution de la décision judiciaire qui tiennent compte des intérêts des deux parties au procès et de la nécessité de renforcer la cohésion sociale. Les deux parties ont alors donné leurs propositions et un compromis a été trouvé. Il s'agissait de diviser la propriété en deux parties égales qui chacune revenait à la personne qui a gagné le procès, revenait à la partie qui a gagné le procès et l'autre a été attribué à cette population compte tenu des investissements qui avaient été faits sur le dit terrain et de la nécessité de permettre à cette population de maintenir l'enthousiasme avec laquelle elle participe dans le développement du pays et de l'impératif de renforcer la cohésion sociale. L'affaire a été clôturée par l'institution de l'Ombudsman. L'autre cas que je peux vous présenter, c'est l'organisation d'un café politique ou d'une retraite politique. La retraite a été souhaitée par les politiciens, les leaders des partis politiques, les leaders religieux, les organisations de la société civile, et l'objectif principal était de contribuer à l'assainissement du climat sociopolitique et au rétablissement de la confiance entre les leaders politiques à travers un débat démocratique, inclusif et sincère sur des questions de gouvernance démocratique en général et dans la perspective de créer un environnement propice à la cohésion sociale et aux élections apaisées en particulier. Il fallait que cette initiative soit soutenue par le ministère ayant la gestion des partis politiques dans ses attributions. L'Ombudsman a approché cette autorité pour l'inviter à adhérer à cette initiative, ce qui a été accepté. Et des contributions constructives ont été données par les participants à la retraite. En plus de ce cadre, ce cadre a été formalisé sous forme d'un forum des partis politiques. Et celui-ci est un élément essentiel pour la construction démocratique et la réconciliation au Burundi. Il offre un espace de dialogue indispensable pour maintenir une gouvernance inclusive. Le dernier cas que je peux vous présenter, c'est le cas d'un dossier en rapport avec les violences basées sur le genre. Au Burundi, le gouvernement encourage des jeunes à faire du bénévolat dans le but d'améliorer leurs propres compétences et de développer des relations enrichissantes en vue de contribuer à la construction d'une société solidaire et plus
équitable. You still have 3 minutes to go.
Oui. OK. Donc, c'est un cas d'une enseignante qui avait besoin d'un document administratif, mais son directeur lui faisant des avances sexuelles, et celle-ci a refusé, et ça lui a valu la perte d'une opportunité d'emploi à l'enseignement. Et il a soumis le cas à l'Ombudsman et on a saisi le ministre en charge de l'éducation qui a essayé de régler le cas. Et aujourd'hui, l'enseignante a été rétablie dans ses droits. Alors, passons à la conclusion et des leçons clés à tirer des cas de médiation réussis au Burundi. Et le cas des accords d'Arusha a montré que le processus de médiation, que la réussite dans un processus de médiation dépend d'une approche inclusive, qu'il faut que toutes les parties prenantes soient invitées pour qu'ils puissent s'exprimer et que des solutions soient trouvées. Là, je résume, vous avez le document, vous allez continuer à le consulter. Et concernant la création du forum des partis politiques, la médiation a permis de créer un cadre d'échange régulier entre les politiciens, ce qui permet aux acteurs politiques de respecter les principes démocratiques. Et la leçon tirée de la médiation après une violence basée sur le genre, c'est que la médiation va dans le sens de réconcilier les parties tout en garantissant que l'auteur des violences soit sanctionné de manière appropriée. Cependant, il est crucial de protéger la victime et de reconnaître la gravité des actes, de mettre en place les conséquences concrètes et de veiller à ce que le processus de médiation respecte les droits humains et soit dirigé par des professionnels qualifiés. Cette approche permet de combiner la réparation et la justice tout en œuvrant pour changer les comportements et prévenir les violences futures. Merci de votre aimable attention.
Thank you very, very much, Honorable Kanyana, for your very insightful presentation, and most especially for the enormous amount of work you put into it. Certainly, I wasn't surprised. Yesterday, by this hour, I was with the former Burundian Ombudsman, Honorable Edward Nduwimana, in my office. He visited me in my office. He's currently the Burundian ambassador to Nigeria, as well as Burundian ambassador to the ECOWAS. He was here, and I had a discussion about you making presentation this morning, and he was very confident. So we are not wrong. Thank you so much for this insightful presentation, and we wish you luck in your future endeavors.
Merci beaucoup.
I would like to call on our next speaker, Dr. Ndale Hale. He is the former Ombudsman of Ethiopia. Dr. Haile will speak on the topic, building trust through Ombudsman services, addressing systemic issues and promoting accountability. He will share practical experiences spanning from his years in academia to the parliament and to the chief ombudsman of Ethiopia. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Haile. You may now proceed with your presentation, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your invitation. Good morning, everyone. Honorable Ombudsperson, distinguished participants, and the organizer of these webinar discussions. First, I would like to thank the African Ombudsman Research Center for this opportunity and to share the Ethiopian experience about the building institutional trust and the promoting accountability. My presentation let me share. So my presentations entitled Building Trust Through Ombudsman Services, Addressing Systemic Issue and Promoting Accountability in Ethiopian context. The objective of these presentations, I took the webinar aim as a general objectives, and I wanted to address some specific questions in these presentations. So in my presentations, I will try to address the questions, what does it mean to say one trust and institutions? What is the role of Ombudsman in building trust? Why does trust in Ombudsman institutions matter? How to build confidence by addressing systematic challenge of governance or public administration. Regarding the table of content, I have two parts. The first part addresses the theoretical framework about public trust and what confidence means, because this is the theme of our discussions today. The second part is about Ethiopian experience related to our title. I think you have informations or understanding about what does it mean trust and confidence. But different scholars can define trust in different ways or in different approaches. Among these, some scholars define trust from relational, situational, and by combining of them. But the common definitions about trust is referred to as the underpinning of all human contacts and institutional interaction, and can be defined as the willingness of one party to rely on the other party to keep its commitment. And we can also define trust from a different perspective, which refers to the belief or confidence in the reliability, integrity, and honesty of another person, entity, or system. Trust is built over time through consistent behavior, transparency, and mutual aspects. The other term, sometimes we are using confidence interchangeably with trust, but both concepts have different definitions or convey different meanings. So we can define confidence as a broader term that refers to a belief in the reliability, truth, or ability of someone or something. And it often arises from evidence, past experience, or logical reasoning. For example, you might have confidence in a product because of you have proven track record or you have experience by purchasing a given product. So confidence can exist without trust, while trust often requires confidence. So trust strengthens when there is evidence or confidence that the other party is reliable and competent. And trust emphasizes reliance on ethical conduct and reliability. Confidence relate to expectations of positive outcomes and effectiveness. Therefore, trust emphasizes reliance on ethical conduct and reliability, while confidence relates to expectations of positive outcomes and effectiveness. So public trust and confidence refers to the collective belief and the reliance of the public in the integrity, competence, and the fairness of institutions, leaders, or systems. So together, public trust and public confidence underpin societal operations and institutional legitimacy. So trust can have different components. The main components that contain the concept of trust, it is about reliability, about integrity, about benevolence and competence. So trust means it does not a single word, but it is a broader concept, and it has contained different emotional aspects of psychology. Public trust can be classified as in different approaches, but basically for the purpose of our discussions, the category of trust as social trust and political trust. So like the Ombudsman institutions and other democratic institutions needs to have a political trust rather than a social trust. So social trust simply it is a position for an individual who have in a given society or in a social class. Whereas a political trust is a confidence in institutions and actors like the executive bodies, trust on judiciary, trust on bureaucracy, trust on police, trust on media and the private sector and the like. So trust in government reflects it is a short-term outcomes and the evaluations of particular leaders and institutions. So political trust could be an ability to deliver quality of public service, to respond to citizen needs and demands, and to deliver the social, economic, and political uncertainties for the citizens. So political trust is simply government performance minus expectation. So it has different importance, why we need public trust, what matters in a given institutions like ombudsman offices. So the main importance of the public trust can be used for policy making, in policy implementations, in case of service delivery, in the case of regime stability, in the case of democratic life. So public trust has more benefits. For instance, in the case of regime stability, there are different crises in different African countries. This political and instability, this social and economic crisis derives from the loss of public trust from their citizens. That's why we are hearing day and the night about the conflict, about the wars in different countries of Africa. We can take an example, the Sudan case, the Democratic Congo case, the civil conflict in Ethiopian case. So public trust is an important aspect for different governments and for different institutions. So there are different factors that erode public trust on a given institutions or in government. For instance, corruptions, the poor performance of the institutions or the government, lack of transparency and accountability, or high expectations of citizens from the institutions or from the government, violence or poor economies aggravates to erode the public trust. So what kinds of measurements that we take or how to build public trust? So this is an important question for Ombudsman officers now. So there are different mechanisms that we use to build a public trust, but it depends on the context of the country or the experience of the country. But the basic criteria or dimensions or tools that used to build trust is one, transparency. Transparency is a critical foundation for trust in government. Citizen engagement. Without having a citizen engagement or without having participations in different decisions of the government, in policy making and implementations, it is possible or difficult to create or to build a public trust. The other issues about the public accountability. So those leaders, those governments, those institutions must be held accountable when they failed to discharge their duties and responsibilities. So if there are a public accountability, we may build a public trust. And responsiveness. Responsiveness is also, it is an important. The government must listen their citizens, must provide services based on the demands of their citizens or based on the expectations of the citizens. And strengthen the rule of law and communication is an important factor to build trust. So in the case of Ethiopia, we have different experiences about how to build trust through ombudsman services and addressing systemic issues and promoting accountability in Ethiopian context. For the purpose of your information, it's important to give some informations about Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman. So the Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman has a constitutional base for the institutions established based on the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopian Constitution. So the constitution is illegitimate and it has a constitutional base. And the first proclamation for the establishment of the Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman ratified in 2000, but officially the office opened in 2005. And regarding the structure of the ombudsman institutions, the country or the government followed the federal form of the government, whereas the Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman structure or established based on the central hierarchical or in a unitary system of the government, because the issue of good governance, the issue of human rights has no ethnic groups, has no religions, or has no any boundaries. So it must be accessible for all citizens. That's why the Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman established in a unitary form of the government. So the head office existed in the capital city of Addis Ababa, and we have 8 branches and different outreach services to receive complaints from the citizens in different regional governments. In our case, we say regional states and districts. regarding the objectives of Ethiopian Ombudsman Office, or the purpose of Ethiopian Ombudsman Office is the it shall be bringing about good governance that is high quality, efficient, and transparent, based on the rule of law, and by way of ensuring that people's rights and benefits and provided for by a law are expected by organ of the executive. So the main objectives of Ethiopian Ombudsman institutions is to regulate or to monitor the performance of the executives, whether they are provided basic services to its citizens, or whether the executives have discharged its duties, or performance the constitutional rights of the citizens. So, like other ombudsman office, the Ethiopian Ombudsman institutions also investigates different complaints. So one of the responsibility of Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman is receive and investigate complaints from citizens regarding maladministrations and other injustices that perpetrated by public institutions and private sectors. So we have received complaints from public institutions as well as from private sectors. I think this makes different from other ombud offices in African countries, because in different African countries, some ombudsman institutions only receives complaints from the public institutions, and they may establish a different or independent institutions who manage maladministrations from private sectors. But in Ethiopian case, we have received complaints from public institutions and private sectors. And the Ethiopian institutions provide recommendations for corrective actions, ensuring that public institutions rectify their mistakes and improve service deliveries. And the Ethiopian institutions of Ombudsman has a responsibility to monitor and evaluate different administrative directives that are issued by the executive organs in line with the constitutions. I think this also that make deeper the Ethiopian institutions ombudsman from other institutional office, because most of the African ombudsman office more focus on investigations, while the Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman has a power to monitor and evaluate how the administrative directives or different regulations are aligned with the constitutional rights of the countries, and conduct supervisions with a view to ensuring that the executive carries out its functions in accordance with the law and to prevent maladministrations. And we can also monitor and evaluate the implementations of access to information. So the Ethiopian Institution of Ombudsman has responsibility to evaluate and monitor the implementations of access to informations. And we have responsibilities to monitor and evaluate the implementations of the rights of children, women, elders, and persons with disabilities in terms of inclusiveness and fairness. And we can undertake different studies and findings, and we can provide the solutions or recommendations for executive bodies in order to improve good governance and the governance systems in different individual public institutions. And we can provide policy options and policy advices through research. And we can have responsibilities or a power to educate citizens about their rights and the responsibilities of public institutions. And we can conduct different conferences, workshops, media campaigns to inform the public about how to present complaints and seek redress. Excuse me. In general, we have 4 types or 4 tools that we are addressing a systemic challenge of governance and public administration. As I mentioned earlier, we use investigation, including on motion investigation and systemic investigations, and monitoring and evaluations, research and public awareness as an instrument or as a tool. Hello.
Dr. Ndale, you are a parliamentarian.
Okay.
If I allow you, are already, I think, 2-3 minutes out of your time.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I wanted to focus on the main points. So for the purpose of these discussions, I divided the age of the period of open institutions of Ombudsman from 2005 to 18, and from onwards 2018 to present, because from 2018 the government has made different reforms, including democratic institutions. So when we are evaluating the major challenges in 2018, the major problem is lack of public trust and confidence on citizens. So due to this reason, the low effectiveness rate, only less than 50% of the recommendations are accepted by the executive bodies, and there were partiality. The chief ombudsman and the deputy ombudsman and some members, some experts are a member of the ruling parties, and the lack of independence. There were a political interference. The higher officials from executive bodies, security, or party office intervene on matters to change the decision made by Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman. And there was an accountability and public awareness problem. So in order to manage or solve these problems, we have made different reform processes. So the first actions that we have taken to amend the proclamations of the establishment. So this amendment grants us a power to Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman, and not allowed to be a political members or the chief ombudsman, deputy, and all the staff of Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman must not be a member of any political parties, so they should be independent. And grants the Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman the authority to use alternative mechanisms to ensure accountability, such as naming and shaming, disclosing information to the public through social and the mainstream media, and pursuing legal actions. And additionally, it strengthens accountability by increasing the upper limit of penalties where the executive fails to implement the recommendations of the Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman, and sued by via Attorney General rather than the police. And the second amendment expands the scope of the Ethiopian institutions of ombudsman power, enabling to receive and investigate complaints of maladministrations in the public sectors. And we have developed different guidelines and the manuals that supports us to monitor, evaluate, conduct researches that are related to good governance. So these guidelines and the manuals enable us to identify the systemic challenge and improve the efficiencies. Example, the guidelines measure the status of good governance in all public institutions. The guidelines include
okay,
only 1 minute.
I'm sorry for that. I know.
So only 1 minute. Sorry. We have established different stakeholders from different societies like the Forum of Democratic Institutions, a media council, Forum of Associations of Disabled, Forum of Women's Federations, and consultative forum with regional councils. So as a result, or the major achievement, the increased number of cases that we received from the citizens, as well as the effective rate that increased from 50% to 75.3%. So these are a great achievements. As to sum up, by providing an accessible and impartial platform for citizens to voice their concerns, the Ethiopian institutions of Ombudsman builds public trust in government institutions, and its transparent process and public reports on investigations and the recommendations enhance confidence in the accountability mechanisms of the states. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ndale. I'm sure everybody has
Honorable
enjoyed your
Bashir,
presentation. Like I said earlier on, being a seasoned parliamentarian and at the same time academician, we can stay on and on and on and on. Thank you so much. Your presentation has provided valuable perspectives that I'm sure will resonate with all of us participating in the webinar. Thank you once again for being part of this. I understand.
Good morning. Should I proceed?
Just a minute, Aline. Good morning, I think.
Good morning. I'm wondering if I may proceed.
Yes, Aline, I think you may proceed until when he's here. So let's see what he has to say.
Dr. Ndale, I understand the new Ethiopian Ombudsman is by your side. Can you kindly introduce him to us, please?
Okay, let me check
if he's
it.
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll check it.
Meanwhile, I also understand the Arabic translation is having two sounds. If our technicians can do something about it as quickly as possible, please. They are having problem with the sound. I think they are having it double, so it is not convenient. Similarly, there are so many requests for copies. There are so many requests for the copies of the slides of all the presentations. But I may be right to say that we are going to get copies of the presentations in the respective websites of AOMA, as well as the sister agency. Thank you so much. May I now go on to our amiable third speaker. The third speaker is speaker of the day is Advocate Ellen Brock of African Ombudsman Research Center. Advocate Brock has dedicated her time and expertise leading to African Ombudsman Research Center, and I'm certain that her presentation on future directions enhancing the impact of ombudsman institutions in modern societies will be filled with practical knowledge. Join me in welcoming Advocate Brock. You're welcome, madam.
Good morning, and thank you to you and to AORC for this opportunity. I really am very proud and excited that AORC is continuing with the various webinar series of value to so many people who are joining. So thank you. So in thinking about the future, I'd like to take a tiny step backwards into the past. At the 1955 Conference of Non-Aligned Nations in Bandung, Indonesia, the then Danish Ombudsman, Professor Stefan Hurwitz, evangelized about the idea of the Ombudsman. For recently decolonized peoples, the Ombudsman was seen as a highly democratic, free, and fair way to give voice to the masses who were voiceless under colonialism. So Ombudsman institutions in Africa, Asia, Latin America grew to meet the needs of the time and rapidly proliferated in southern countries during the 1960s and 70s. Latin America actually was a bit later in response to war and violence there, but certainly what was then called the Third World really accepted and employed this idea of the Ombudsman. Although they are no longer colonies today, many countries are still subject to foreign control of vital resources and infrastructure. And frankly, given recent developments in the US, I don't think it's hyperbole or conspiracy thinking to suggest that as the push to control the world's rare earth metals, which are necessary to dominate new technologies, continues, I predict that exploitation, especially in extractive industries by foreign interests, will potentially help to plunge countries even deeper than they already are into systemic poverty, health, food, and financial crises. And in this context of today, which is a little different from 1955, the Ombudsman institution, especially in Africa and Latin America, has needed to respond to the situation at hand. They have already broken free of the traditional European so-called classical ombudsman mold of purely complaint handling and have adapted to the current times. In Ghana and most Latin American countries, for example, the Ombudsman is explicitly a defender of human rights, and informally so in many other countries. In Namibia, the Ombudsman is responsible for monitoring international environmental obligations, and I am hopeful that Ombudsman will increasingly adopt this, be able to extend its powers to this kind of role as the climate change crisis continues to unfold as quickly as it is and threatening ordinary people's lives all over the world. Increasingly, ombudsmen do assume other remits, such as anti-corruption in Malawi, political violence in Guatemala and Jamaica, policy reform and election supervision in Peru, peace negotiation, as we've just heard, in Burundi and Colombia, amicus briefs and participation in the judicial process, for example, in St. Martin, and special attention to vulnerable persons, in particular women, in Zambia. These are a few examples, and many of you can point to your own jurisdictions and your own legislation for special powers and special jurisdiction that goes beyond the typical and simple complaint handling role. I just want to mention at a meeting in 2005 between the Caribbean and Latin American ombudsmen, there was robust discussion, even disagreement, about what the focus of an ombudsman ought to be. Is it the administrative justice ombudsman with some use of a human rights lens, as the Caribbean ombudsman were arguing, or is it that they should be, an ombudsman must be a human rights ombudsman, which includes administrative justice, which was the argument of the Latin Americans. It was a slight difference in focus, but I think today there's an acceptance that we're not one or the other, but rather for each matter that an ombudsman addresses, he or she can respond with the tools of administrative justice and the tools of human rights priorities, whatever is going to be most effective to resolve the underlying structures that give rise to the complaints presented to the Ombudsman. Let me give you one notable case. In 2010, there was a terrible earthquake in Haiti, and the Ombudsman, Florence Lee, is a real poignant example of how an ombudsman must sometimes stop what they're doing to respond to emergency needs. Her office suspended complaint handling. Luckily, no one in her office was killed as a result of the earthquake, and they all turned their attention to using the funds that people had donated. Other ombudsmen throughout the Caribbean had donated to create baskets for supplies for the families in the immediate neighborhood of the office. Just from our little meager contribution from Bermuda, they were able to create 300 such baskets. So they actually did a couple of thousand and responded to the needs of the people right in the immediate area. Now, when Honorable Haley spoke just now about increasing trust and confidence, you can imagine that this particular activity and response of the Ombudsman from Haiti really changed and improved the trust of the people in her office. Of course, this was a temporary once-off situation, but her response does teach us that ombudsmen can step out of the box when necessary and assume a broader role instead of sitting in a space of complacency. I believe that upcoming challenges will be enormous, imminent, and unlikely to abate anytime soon. I wish that we were an ever-increasing global civilization, but sometimes one sees a retrenchment from government corruption to poor regulation of mercenary medical practices, inflationary oil prices, drugs, warlords pillaging the population, invisible utility fees, under-resourced relief for domestic violence and femicide, to international manipulation, as we've seen, for example, in the withdrawal of U.S. aid this past week, which is not my favorite organization, but at least we know they were doing important work, especially in HIV. There is a plethora of pressures that will drive people to seek out the ombudsman more and more. So how does the ombudsman wade into the future? I believe boldly, without the paralysis that often afflicts other helping agencies. I believe confidently, despite a government culture that today gives only lip service to ombudsman. We cannot be paralyzed by our deficits and limitations. We must move forth. And therefore, ombudsman must continue to focus on and maneuver ways to strengthen the institution internally, as an institution, and within the community, because community support at the moment when an ombudsman is under threat is extremely critical. That goes without saying. So internally, let's start where we are now. The goal is to solidify public credibility, as we've just heard from Honorable Haley. Effectiveness, in addition to constant advocacy for adequate resources for the work that we are already mandated to do. I can't imagine any ombudsman office anywhere in the world that is operating at 100% capacity. So our task is to look at what we are not doing well and strategically make the effort and the innovation needed to improve efficiency, accessibility, integrity, independence, truth-telling, and professionalization of our processes and actions. And this requires taking full advantage to utilize the existing powers at our disposal, and when we can, to forge amendments to our legislation to clarify and enhance our powers. I know that's a distant goal because governments do not want to increase the power of the ombudsman, but there may be stealth ways of doing so. The first tools for the future of the ombudsman are internal. For example, one of the things that we have as ombudsman that many other independent agencies that are meant to have influence over the government, statutory influence over the government, making recommendations and so forth, is that ombudsmen do have the power of proximity to ordinary communities in a way that really elude the bureaucracy itself and the power brokers and decision makers. We can build trust by the means in which Honorable Haley just mentioned, and that include proactive listening and crafting of individual and systemic complaints that clarify the context in which suffering and injustice are brought to us in the forms of complaints. Articulating the aspiration of the masses can yield credibility, respect, public, and even civil service appreciation of our value. Honorable Haley elaborated on the value of benevolence in building both political and social trust, as we've just heard. And so ombudsman must make sure that our offices are one with the people rather than positioning ourselves over and above the people. Now, my example is very useful for my small country of Bermuda, and I know it's not available to all of you, but one thing I used to do for short flights was travel in economy class. And when I would walk into the back in the economy class, people would say, "Oh, Ombudsman Brock, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be sitting up in business class?" Well, for long flights, I certainly did. But for short flights, the 2.5 hour flights to the US, I did not. I sat with ordinary people in economy class, and this was noted. This was talked about and made people feel that I was seriously concerned with standing up for them. So that might not be your way of doing it, but you must find ways of ensuring that people see at a visceral level and a practical level that you are actually not in a class above, just like the political elites tend to be. For those ombudsmen with the own motion investigatory power, this is a critical power, and I'm not sure that all ombudsmen are boldly and confidently embracing this power and executing it. The own motion investigations almost always have a systemic and human rights aspect that can animate our analysis and our recommendations. The implementation of systemic recommendations goes a long way to alleviating the conditions in which the individual complaints arise. Thereby, we can help to lower the risk of repeating that same injustice. In crafting such systemic recommendations, ombudsmen often use the expertise of witnesses. And it was always interesting to me that the very civil servants being investigated, if you ask them correctly, will often actually have helpful ideas for how they could have better handled the situation if they had received or been given the right powers and resources. I never took the view that civil servants woke up in the morning, looked in the mirror, and said to themselves, "How will I make life difficult for people today?" I think all human beings want to go to our graves feeling that we did something of value. Accordingly, I began to ask and increasingly got better and better answers. What would you do if you had the ideal conditions to resolve or even avoid the complaint that I'm investigating you about? And often got really great recommendations that many of which were eventually adopted by governments without the legislators realizing it came from their own civil service.
Our amiable Brock, our former director, your time is just 1 more minute.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
sorry against our time so that they don't cut us off.
Thank you. Let me then go really quickly. I will not cover the issues that Honorable Kenyana has already done about the value of mediation. She explained very well how critical mediation is to be used for peacemaking and other circumstances. So let me go then to something that I think maybe we don't recognize as well, and that is that ombudsmen have a power of convening. And it's a power that we rarely use. What we're doing now is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about convening agencies within countries, government representatives, and health, human rights agencies, etc., to actually engage in joint problem solving for those issues that we think require a systemic and sustainable redress of conditions that give rise to complaints. We can galvanize best thinking, expertise, and experience. We should especially honor, of course, and include the perspective of complainants who are most impacted. Convening not only ensures buy-in, but also commitment to action. So in our future, ombudsmen will be called upon to do more with less. In conclusion, we must therefore be efficient and nimble in looking for ways to effect systemic change beyond individual complaints. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such an enlightful presentation. We appreciate the time and effort you have taken to share your knowledge with us today. We are not surprised being a very resounding director of African Ombudsman Research Center. Thank you so much once again. We will now take questions and answers for the next few minutes. Unfortunately, we are behind time. And if you have questions, you can indicate so that you will be called upon to ask. If due to time constraints that we are unable to answer all questions, do not worry. What I would suggest, maybe the questions, I will read a few of them here. Some are observations, of course, and some are questions. Maybe we can still fall back to the website of the respective two agencies so that the same questions can be laid off there, and then the answers can be provided. But I have not forgotten the Ombudsman of Ethiopia. I would like to see your face, please, if you are just by the corner.
She went for other meetings, not accessible now.
No problem. So extend our best regards to her, and we welcome her into our family. Before I continue, I would want all participants to join Nigeria in celebrating her 50th Ombudsman year of October this year. Nigeria will be 50 years into Ombudsman family. So appreciate all of us here in Nigeria on behalf of our admirable Nigerian president and all citizens of Nigeria. We wish all of you well. I understand also participants that are able to stay on till the end of this program, they are entitled to getting a certificate from the organizers. We appreciate that. I hope everybody will hook on till the end of this program. Now to wrap up, the questions, let me put a few ones. What are the strategies for building good relationships with other parties? That is one. If our participants can take on this. How can Ombudsman use AI to further the interests of the community and assist their employees from within to work effectively in intense electoral context? What approach should the mediator or ombudsman adopt in order to settle disputes arising in this context? This is to the general politicians, and if also our participants can be able to handle this for us, either now or maybe in writing through the website. I would like to learn about qualification required to be an expert in resolving conflict. How to bring a conflict resolution that will not be biased to both parties, which is the cheapest between mediation and arbitration. Another one says, the investigators, I mean, could the investigator be a mediator at the same time? This one, the question, this one is not very clear. The investigator could be as a mediator at the same time. Okay. Is the investigator, can the investigator also be a mediator? So this, I think, if I can rephrase that, that is what that question means. Another one, the perception of fairness in the eyes of complainants, broader public, is crucial to foster trust in ombudsman. What measures can be implemented to address concerns, impartiality, and mitigate distress caused when a decision does not favor a complainant? My fear, that is another one, is how to resolve conflict between serving an impartial mediators and addressing systemic challenges. My biggest concern is how to resolve difficult cases and to strategize and strengthen. This is what we have on the questions and comments. So if I can get any of the our amiable presenters to maybe answer a few. Unfortunately, we have just 5 minutes to close. So I think I would suggest maybe the answers can be sent to the website, and I would want to wrap up, ladies and gentlemen, by thanking each and every one of you, especially our very, very erudite presenters today. So eloquent and well-researched, gentlemen and ladies by excellence. On behalf of the Ombudsman, Nigerian Ombudsman here with center in Abuja, the capital, the administrative capital of Nigeria, I would like to sincerely thank you so much for your participation. To the organizers, I appreciate you especially choosing Nigeria to participate fully in this program. Let us key in the lessons from today and apply strengthening the capacities of our respective ombudsman institutions in resolving conflicts and build trust in our respective countries. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to having you all in our next event. And thank you so much, African Ombudsman Research Center and African Ombudsman Mediators Association, for this wonderful opportunity.
Chief,
thank you once again. I will now hand over. Thank you so much.
Chief, let's allow every speaker to have at least 1 minute to conclude or to say something, and then Marion will close. Can we do that, Chief?
Okay. If we still have the time, by my time here, we have 3 minutes to go.
I'm sure we can extend it by another 5 minutes just to hear their final thoughts, 1 minute each, and then we can ask Marion to please.
Excellent. This is very beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Let's move ahead. Let's start from the first speaker. Honorable Amy, are you around the corner?
Merci beaucoup.
You have 1 minute to appreciate this program, please.
Okay, thank you. C'est juste pour vous remercier de l'organisation de cette réunion combien enrichissante. Et j'espère qu'on va continuer sur la même lancée et continuer à échanger les bonnes pratiques. Merci.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Ndale of Ethiopia.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to thank again the organizer and the participants. So I got a good lessons from the presentation.
Thank you very, very much. Can I move on to my dear Brock? Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you to all. And I just want to encourage us as ombudsmen to lean on each other, to speak to each other. I often reached out to South Africa and other places to know what are the edges of your law? What is it that you can do? What are best practices? And in turn, a couple of ombudsmen sent draft reports to me to review and comment, so we can start to utilize each other more. I know that we don't have time to do everything we have to do, but that process helps us to share our experiences and expertise.
Thank you very, very much to all participants. Let me hand us over again to Mrs. Marian Adonis.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you once again for joining. Honorable Ombudsman, distinguished speakers, esteemed participants, and colleagues, as we conclude today's insightful and engaging webinar, it is my privilege to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks on behalf of the African Ombudsman Research Centre and the African Ombudsman and Mediators Association. First and foremost, our sincere gratitude goes to our esteemed speakers, Honorable Amy Laurentine Kanyana, Honorable Ndale Haley, Advocate Arlene Brock, for sharing the expertise, experiences, and thought-provoking insights. Your contributions have enriched our understanding of how ombudsman institutions can foster trust, resolve conflicts, and enhance governance across Africa and beyond. A special thank you to our facilitator, Honorable Bashir Abubaker, for skillfully guiding today's discussions and ensuring a meaningful exchange of ideas. We also extend our appreciation to Advocate Koleka Galeka, who was not able to join. She's a chairperson of the AORC board, for her continued leadership in strengthening ombudsman institutions. To all participants from over 45 countries and ombudsman offices, thank you for your engagement, for your questions, your commitment to advancing the role of ombudsman institutions in promoting justice, fairness, and transparency. Your involvement is what makes these discussions impactful and relevant. A heartfelt appreciation also goes out to Hazel from the UKZN Corporate Relations, who ensured that this webinar took place. We also thank the interpreters and technical team who ensured smooth communication across multiple languages, minus a few hiccups. We thank them. We look forward to continuing these important discussions and working together to strengthen ombudsman institutions in Africa. Please visit the AOMA-AORC website for further resources and follow-up materials from today's sessions. We do have past webinars on our website. There's a lot of information there. They can watch webinars at their leisure, the past webinars, and this one will also be posted during the course of the next week. Thank you once again. We hope to see you at all future AORC events. Wishing you a wonderful day ahead. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Merci, ciao.
Merci
Ciao.
beaucoup.
And
Bye.
thanks to Dr. Nyang for following us as well, for joining the webinar. Apology, we couldn't give you a chance to speak. Dr. Nyang from the UNHCR. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.